It's a pleasure to come here, Paige. And I'll try to keep the volume up. If I drop down, just tell me to speak up a little higher. I've done archaeology this year for 50 years. I'm not retired, but this is my 50th year, and I'm a Vietnam veteran. I was drafted. It's the only lottery I ever won, so that's why I don't play the lottery. Why? I'm not gonna win it again, you know? So when I got out of the service, I calculated how long it would take me to get through undergraduate and graduate school, and I had 5 years at the VA Navy. I couldn't afford it to go to school without VA. I'll be real blunt. Without VA, I would never been able to go to school. So I was going to be a lawyer, and so they said major in English. And when I got out of service, I would cut classes to go look for area, they would say. And I took one of the things that I found at the University of Tennessee. Well, I'm from Colorado. I just didn't want to go home after being where I've been. And I took it to the University of Tennessee, and the guy said to me, he said, well, that's a really nice silk. They use it for carving wood, and it's a really beautiful polished ones out of greenstone. And I just wanted to know what to do with it. I knew it wasn't good for me to keep it. I needed to give it and get it interpreted. So he asked me two real important questions. He said, do you ever want to grow up? And I said, not really. And he said, do you mind getting dirty? And I said, don't mind it. He said, we pay $2 an hour. I said, sign me up. So it was about, you know, that really wasn't that much money back then, but it still was enough money that I wasn't started yet. So I've been doing archaeology. Well, in the case of the Colorado River Basin, I've come to the conclusion that there are people of the canyons that had a different environment than most people did. They had good water in most cases because water carved the canyons. They had different environmental niches that they could move up and down to in a short distance. For example, if you're at the bottom of the Grand Canyon, you move up a little higher, your plants change. That gives you more variability in the plants that you can process. It also gives you more variability in the animals that you can get. And what happened within these canyons, they developed a sustainable lifestyle that would last them for almost, well, for millennia. 10,000 years, 13,000 years ago, the oldest site that I've excavated in a canyon. And there they were getting fish. So in addition to the other things, you have fish flowing by you, and you just have to go out there and catch them. You have animals coming there to drink. It's a good place to live, but you have to move up and down to be prosperous in it. So the first thing that I found when I went back to Colorado, that's where I was born, to Colorado, went back to Colorado, was what was called a black horse, which is a petroglyph that's carved with, not carved, it's painted. So just for those of you that don't know, pictographs are painted, petroglyphs are painted. And there's a lot of better, what I call rock art archaeologists than I, like Carol Patterson, Paul Shaftsman, a whole host of people that's all they do. But when you excavate the sites, and there's a rock art panel right beside you, you say, okay, what is this and how do I interpret it? In the very name of, oh, she's got to push this in. Do you mind putting the?
That didn't work?
Oh, the mouse, just put the mouse inside the other. Yeah, there was.
Asking a lot.
There we go. So in the case of the rock art that we find adjacent to where people live, there's a lot of things to interpret. It seems like that when you decide to make a carving of something, you record what your life is about. You do different styles. When people look at a piece of art, no matter what that piece of art is, they come away with a different interpretation. I mean, archaeologist by the name of Louis Binford, said that light is an artifact. It depends on what time of day you come to this particular rock, what type of light's casting on that rock, of what you're going to articulate and illustrate inside of this art. This is a historical rock art panel, and it was drawn by what they call Comanches. Now, this is attributed to this particular group. It doesn't mean that they're there. They live at the far end, north end of the drainage system. I'll talk about that in a second. But if you look at it, it has additional things carved on top of it. 1846, that's when the trail people came through there, and they carved right on top of this smooth place that the Comanche had prepared. They had prepped this stone. They'd rubbed this stone, and they got ready to peck on it so that they rubbed this smooth. You can see how it's knocked down this to create the horse. They outlined it, and a lot of times they outlined it with chalk.
But it works.
In the case of transitions, for example, on the Ute Nation reservation, they carved the train that went through. So they were showing a transition in the technology that they were experiencing. In the formative period, which is the period where they transfer from being people that are just hunting, gathering, to being farmers, you have a different type of rock art style. And in the canyons, from the Green River down to where we're at right here, because Colorado just to the left of us right here, down where right here, there's rock art of varying types and styles that depict people's lives in the way things are at. This is in the main canyon, and Colorado can argue about it. They say it's in their property, but Colorado missed the legal boundary line between Wyoming and Colorado. Those go Rovers. And this is right on the Colorado border, but it's a tributary to the Green. The Green is one of the largest contributors of water to the Colorado River system. So it's on the Green River. We can get this in. But in this particular style that I'll talk about later on, this particular style is associated with farmers. People that still did what their ancestors did, gather grass, gather berries, kill rabbits, kill buffalo, kill deer. They did exactly what their relatives had done, but they added to it other things that they were planting. A lot of that, except for maize and beans, was stuff that already grew there. So they grew sunflowers, they grew peanut, they grew plants that they already knew were going to be prosperous there. You don't want to waste your time as a farmer planting something that's not going to succeed in a dry, cold climate. High elevation, cold, little moisture. You want to make sure that you're planting plants that you can see that are working. So you look at your environment, you see which grasses are going to grow, and you plant those grasses, except in higher amounts and higher numbers. This is the Colorado River drainage basin system. There's the upper part and the lower part. As you know, in the case of the dividing of the Colorado River compact, it's right here at Lee's Ferry, which is just a little bit from us, where Lee Ferries was. So it was, you took 7.5 million acre water feet of water for each of the lower basin states, which those are the states that are here, Wyoming, Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, Utah, Nevada, California. 7.5 million acre feet of water was provided for you at Lee's Ferry. That was based on Mount Lee's Ferry. 79% of that water comes from Colorado. Probably about 20%, or maybe 15, 20% comes from Wyoming, and then a large amount from Utah. Those are contributor states. Upriver, the rock art is different than downriver. And that's partially because of the fact that you're coming into a different environment that's got a different type of water to use. The Colorado River is never, well, I shouldn't say this, should never go dry. The Colorado River is something that they could depend on.
Dudley said
it. We'll see what happens. Yeah. It's kind of interesting, but anyway, so, but in the case of the Colorado River, it was as far as people prior to the arrival of the Europeans, it was a river that you could depend on never going dry. Upriver too. Those rivers have largely elaborate developed cultures that were farmers and gatherers that stayed in one place for most of the life of the time that they're there. So we're going to look at rock art of the canyons, and the interpretation that I have is, except for the economic part of it, it's an interpretation. Next time I come and give a talk, I'm going to talk about this at the end of this talk, and it's not kind of being a teaser or anything like that. But when I was going through this and preparing for this, I was looking at these small houses, these small farmer houses that had rock art inside the house in the upper part of the basin. And I want to look at what these people are doing for food resources and present that, because desert people in trawling, they're the ones that first cultivated wheat, they're the ones that first cultivated rye, and they cultivated barley because everybody knows they need a beer. So there was just, this is something that they learned how to do, but cultivation of grasses is critical. Maize is grass. So, you know, the rock art of the people of the canyons is kind of intriguing. Now, in this, this right up here is this whole area that you see here, this white line, is Uto-Aztecian. That's a linguistic group. But so is this area here, the Western Shoshone or Uto-Aztecian. It's the same thing with the Hopi or Uto-Aztecian, etc. This, we are on land that was lived on by the Navajo and the Hopi. We're on the ancient lands of these particular Native American groups. In the case of the upper groups in the upper basin, the Shoshone acquired the forest from the Ute by 1640. We've done, and I'll talk about this again in a moment. We have done analysis on a forest that was just south of Green River, Wyoming, outside of Flaming Gorge Dam. And they ran the radiocarbon dates twice, and the genetics are there. It was there by 1640. When Coronado came through here, there were escaped forces. What the assumption was is that the Native Americans ate them. The Native Americans understood animals, they understood plants. They saw how fast the Spaniards moved, and the first thing they did was begin to breed them and cultivate them. So much so that by the 1600s, that the Shoshone were the principal traders of horses. And their cousins, the Comanches, were too. Once their herds became enlarged, they traded in north, and what they say at the Blackfoot is that the Shoshone provided them with a horse. But they split. The Shoshone went north up into Alberta. They were turned back by smallpox. Smallpox was eventually what stopped their advance to the north. And the Comanche went down south into Texas, and they went fast. They went really quick. They moved real fast, and they were called the Lords of the Plains. They were some of the best warriors that ever lived. What I used to tell my people in my Wyoming history classes and my classes in Rock Springs is it just goes to show you that given the means of transportation, people will leave southwestern Wyoming as quick as possible. But they go back. Yeah, so they go back. So, but it's kind of intriguing. These are the periods, and I think that just for the matter of focusing, the Paleo period, people understand this is where mammoths and camels and horses, the three-toed horse was actually around at that time, existed. And it goes from about 13,000, I'm gonna take this date up here, 13,000 back to 1900. We've excavated a site that I've given a presentation on here called Eagle Rock that dates from that time span, 13,000 to 950. So here, this is the date range given in BP, this is the date range in BC, so I'm mixing those up, I shouldn't confuse those. Then is the Archaic period. This is when things began to settle down, and they became more dependent on a diverse group of animals because the larger mammals had died down. By the way, the mammoth didn't go extinct by dying out. The mammoth pygmy, the grasses weren't as high, there wasn't as much water, they pygmy, then they became extinct. When they became pygmy mammal, when they got smaller, they were easier to hunt, easier to kill, and they just were technically taken out by predators and by humans for food. I should be careful about saying that because it's a complex thing that I just described in 2 sentences. But in the Archaic period, they began to use plants. In some time during the Formative Period, this period down here, which has it about 2150 BP, this is for Colorado. This is West Central Colorado. It's earlier here. They think that this might be 3,000, especially down in the southern basin, in the Valley of the Sun down south by Tucson. It could be a lot earlier than this. They begin to transition to agriculture. There are some sites that have been found with maize on there 3,000 years before present, 3,000 years before present. And then comes the protohistoric. This protohistoric correlates with the arrival of the Spaniards, and for us here in Arizona, that is 1540. 1540. I had to do that. After 1492, 1540. So Coronado came here in 1540, and that is when the arrival of the horse came. At that point, the economy changes, partially because of the fact that they can hunt bison, and bison are extremely interesting because the fact kill one bison, you have food for a year, essentially. They say that hunters and gatherers worked a lot less than do people today, but they acquired the same amount of calories that we needed to survive because of the fact that they could get one bison every last year. The horse culture that developed enriched the people that were to the north, and a lot of them abandoned farming. Think about it. You have an opportunity to just ride your horse all day, go see different places, kill buffalo, maybe next year kill buffalo. I'm kind of joking, but not quite. It just was a natural transition. It's an economic transition. Humans do not do well with economic transitions. People don't do well when the culture changes back. They hark back to an older time, but ultimately through time, they make those changes. And so we're going to start with a point nearest to us and then go back in the past in this discussion. So the first horse arrived in the Southwest in 1539 and 1540 with Fray Marcos and Francisco Vasquez de Coronado. So in terms of where we're at, you go due west, due east towards El Moro, towards Grants, towards Gallup. Come south, Coronado made it to that point. So the horse, some of them came, they think, from Coronado's expedition to see where the Grand Canyon was. That's been discussed. The horse had moved. So they had knowledge of this horse. The first thing they want to do is try to comprehend what that animal is. The second thing they want to know is it better to ride or change? It's better to ride. If that's okay. I mean, in Mongolia, we ate horse. The horses get spread faster than scientists once believed. And the genetics show that there's a specific type of animals that are left in the genetics. In Southwest Wyoming, we still have barbs within the genetic pool. Those are Spanish horses. So we know for a fact that there's a tradition that goes through it. And the people that could trade horses became the great traders of the region. Cassidy Thornhill in 2016 dated horse remains in southwestern Wyoming with a confidence interval median date of 1640. There's 2 dates from the same animal, 1640 is when this animal was in Wyoming, which is absolutely fascinating because it wasn't just any horse, it was sacrificially buried. It was very good. I think this is one of the other ones she did, very good cattle. So it was the cattle was processing very there too. And the site, which you guys that have heard me before are used to. In the site that we excavated in northwest Colorado, where we have this elaborate structure that collapsed on itself and everything was left in complete preservation inside that structure, we found coyote bones that were cut and made into omelets and into bracelets and into necklaces. So coyote bones are pretty sacred to a lot of cases. In the case of this horse burial, it just shows the significance of the horse to that person that was buried. The first record that we have of the horse is in rock art, and this is really the intriguing rock art piece. It would be within Ute traditional areas. It's just to the north of Moab, and so we're getting close to us right here. Just to the north of Moab, and in this particular case, the articulation of the horse in chalk shows it is a little bit layered, but the mixing of the red with inside this chalk is important. Now the shield is critical. And you can't commingle these things, and that's what happens sometimes when you describe Native Americans. The spear and the shield, the lance and the shield were really important. For example, Crazy Horse was a lance, Sitting Bull was a shield. The shield protected the people back at the little big one when Custer attacked. The lance, here at Crazy Horse, attacked. So the lance and the shield are real important. In this particular drawing right here, though the Ute are a different culture, keep that in mind. There is kind of a reference to the lance, but definitely the shield. And this diminutive person on this horse looks like it's in a robe, which could be a Catholic issue, or it could just be the way that they wanted to articulate this. But the diminutive person on the horse is intriguing to me. It's something that was drawn when the first horse was placed there, or what is this from? In the case of the Ute, they showed this particular, what was going on with it. So this is, again, this is a Ute drawing. And the Utes are going after bison. This is a bison. And the intriguing thing is that in addition to the First Nation, you have a person with a hat that looks very much European with a gun. And the rock art that shows guns, I think I have one later on, shows guns, shows the technological advances in the gun. From the flintlock, the matchlocks actually, but the flintlock to the percussion cap is shown within inside the rock art. So there's an articulation of changes upon us. The problem with acquiring a gun is once you acquire a gun, you have to know how to repair it. And once you have to know how to repair it, you have to get parts from somewhere else. It's like I'm driving a Toyota. My parts have to come from Japan, a part of an international economic system when that happens, not all parts. The same thing with it when they acquired the gun. When they acquired the gun, they were part of an international system that had to bring the guns and the parts until they learned how to blacksmith them from somewhere else, whether it be Spain to this particular area here, or whether it be England in the east. So you became part of an economic system that was beyond your local ability to control. And that's the primary difference between the formative period and the protohistoric, is where you're getting some of your important goods and items from, manufactured in the period. The Native Americans were really, really, really quick on learning how to become blacksmiths. We excavated Fort Bonneville, which is just off the Green River. It's actually on the Green River, which is on the Green River far north of this 1830s fortification. Inside of that fortification, the Native Americans had cut planks for making arrows with. They would sell them the barrel hoop, fragment of the barrel hoop, not the barrel hoop, a chisel, and a file. And they made beautiful metal points. Then they learned, once that happened, they learned how to heat that up with coke, and they learned how to fashion it, and they learned how to hammer it, first with stones, then later on with hammers. But they became blacksmiths themselves. So the transitions are kind of critical, and what they're articulating in their art is transition from period to period. I would say this one here, people could argue with me, that extension up higher up there is way a gunflint could look, but a matchlock, you put that higher up on the shoulder. So the matchlock was higher up on the shoulder and infused lit, and that's a slow way to do it. I'm not going to say that's a matchlock, but it's definitely flintlock and matchlock. That's how the technology is. Got to be careful of it. If somebody wants to argue with it, I'll go with whatever they say. Okay, again, the bow and arrow. The bow and arrow is actually a big advance too. Back to this slide here showing this. Okay, where they articulated the horse is pretty interesting to me. And it seemed like, especially among some of the groups to the north, if they had a horse, they wanted to articulate that they have a horse with them. So depending on if you had access to ochre, you would draw your horse in, and there would be what we call stick figures, but I don't think there's such a thing as stick figure. I think it's just a different expression of what you're trying to show other people over there. So in this particular case, you have to crawl down through this cavern, through this hole. You have to crawl down in this hole, and then along the sides of the back wall are 3 horses. This horse is not very well, is not very well seen. In this case, they're drawing it with red ochre. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 horses inside of it that they're showing. In this case, this horse is in a remote area, and they take and articulate it on the side wall of a cave that's hard to access. Why is this? In some cases where we think this is hard access, the one thing that happened that's natural is why buy a horse when you can steal it? So we think sometimes, I don't know this for a fact, I'm not ascribing guilt or anything here. But in one case, we have this corrales in this real remote area that's for the horses. And we know that this got the same type of rock art around it. We know for a fact that probably they didn't want anybody to know if they had the horses. In the meantime, when they begin to make their changes in the historical period, they changed the way that they articulate their rock art. Stone was a primary thing that they used. Antler was the primary thing that they used. But when you begin to get metal used to carve your rock art, the incisions are deeper. Now, the other things about metal art is that they usually have more precise lines going down on it, deeper inside the sandstone, and it's a totally different method that they use to articulate their rock art.
And don't, when you say articulate, what do you mean by articulate?
Pound it in. So there's 2, 3 different ways they do it. So they took and smooth like that first horse. They take a piece of sandstone and smooth it down, and with an abrasion. So we call it abrasion there. Then there's the other ones where they heck it, and then the other ones where they groove. So when I'm saying it's articulated, I'm trying to just combine all those things together. In that particular case, the one we just saw, I think it's all metal. The same thing with this bison here. This bison here is more in the historic area. It's adjacent to the Ute Reservation, to the east of the Ute Reservation in Colorado. But the way they articulate the animals are pretty intriguing. This head was designed specifically to end at the edge of this rock. And I'll show you one in just a moment. In the case that they're using light to show their art off. This
Let
is
me go back.
Yeah, go back.
So is that a person that's
Yes.
there on the left-hand side
Yeah, that's a
or the
person.
right-hand side? I mean,
Yeah, that's a person. Yeah, very good eye, very good eye. And there's something going on here. I don't know. See, the tail comes across here. It's definitely a bison. I don't know if I've got one of these bisons here, but they become quite elaborate in their articulation or making of this particular animal. This is the black horses, and this was the first rock art that I saw as a young archaeologist in 1977. And I became fascinated with it ever since. And then I would go to as many places I could where they had rock art and go to look at these places. But this black horse is not necessarily doesn't always last. The problem you've got right here is going to go touch the screen. The problem you've got right here is this wears off. You see how this flex behind here? I got a contract from the National Park Service to work at Elmore National Monument on the New Mexico border. They have a problem with that stuff's falling off. The water gets behind the rock and it just pops off. There is salt in these rocks. Remember that the stuff that's sedimentary was formed in the ocean, so there's salt in that rock. That salt dissolves ultimately as it gets exposed to the air, to the water, and it dissolves and it pops these things off. And what also gets me is you actually have insects bore into some of the sandstone because it's softer to create their nest. Well, in this case, with this, yeah, that's just it. So that's just it. So this is the head up here. This is the rider. This is his legs across the horse. But it's so eroded back here that you don't get it. This is the saddle. So you've lost so much of the horse. You've lost this. This is his head. This is the foot. This is his form. Now I've got some. That's how you can tell what they are. You can take it and associate them with other things that are similar to their whole
That
complete.
is facing the other way. I think the rider going the other way.
It could be. It could be. Yeah, I won't argue. It could be the other way. But the reason that I say that, is this If he's turned around, that's pretty tricky.
Yeah,
We put this, the people that were with me put his head up here.
Yeah.
The people, the other archaeologists who were with me put this at the head. But I can see what you're saying.
but it looks like the top of the rider to the right, looks like that's worn off too.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Okay.
The black horses, I hope I've got a good one. The black horses are pretty, oh, I do. Yeah, he's right backwards. The black horses are indicative of where they stop for a night and use charcoal. It's charcoal. They're all charcoal. Every one of these black riders is charcoal. The one that I showed you that was in red, that's ochre or phenotype. It's red ochre. This stuff is drawn with charcoal, and of course the charcoal is going to wash off whenever you get it. This one is pretty well done. Now this is from that site that I excavated. This is on the roof of that cave. So inside that rock art, Carol Patterson thought that we had rock art that dated to the Paleo period to the left. And you've got superimposition. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. You have superimposition over the top of older rock art, and what it does is destroy the rock art. It makes it harder to see beneath it. So you will articulate on top of it because the space is sacred. In this case, what happens is the deer come down this canyon from Grand Mesa down to Gunnison, and they cross there. It's the first place they can cross. So basically, one of my friends, who is simple-minded, he's really good, yeah, says what it's saying is stop here, kill the deer because it's where they cross the river. In truth, there's a lot of deer at this particular crossing. So the deer are packed into this, and you know this is the case. This is on the roof of the shelter, and it's preserved a lot better. You can tell this is the head. You see the forelegs a little bit, but you can definitely see the back legs and it's facing in the right direction. You go back to your earlier point. But he's facing in the direction that goes this way. If you look at this, though, his withers towards the back are more elongated. That doesn't mean that's the way that they articulate. I think they articulate the horse the way they're trying to express it. I think Plenty said the white man is next to God in the period, but he's not. Because he does not think that the horse is human. I've looked into my horse's eyes and I've seen its soul. Well, they depended on the horse so much that the horse was everything to them. When they developed and adopted the horse as part of their culture and economy, the horse was sacred to them. And I kind of like the idea that no matter who it was, they wanted to articulate, I came here by horse, or this is where I'm at, and I came by my horse. Now it becomes more elaborate. The difference between this and the previous one you just saw, this is a later period of time. And this was what they would call reservation dress. And this reservation dress, and the horse is different articulated. If you have studied art and you've done it yourself, when you first start drawing and you want to draw a perfect human form or draw a perfect animal form, you have to know about the musculature, you have to know how they fit, you have to know how the way that the horse rides on, how the person rides on the horse. Over time, those become different. I'll show you something that's really masked in just a second. Over time, they begin to articulate it different. So in this particular case, what you've got is a female with the horses at this point. This is what they call Apache shields. And this was recorded by Escalante as he came north to the canyons in western Colorado. From here, it's not that far the way the bird flies, but it's a long way back where the car drives. In these Apache shields, they were articulating animals inside the shield, but they were also putting horses, which not horses, guns on the top of them. So there they had flintlocks on top of the shields. This is more reservation time. Most of you have seen bison, right? They're wool around the top shoulders, they're really woolly. What they did is they took advantage of that for this particular, for drawing this particular bison, and they carved away the stuff on the thin back of a horse, and then they left the other part for the mane in good shape. Back to this right here, just shows the way that they perceive the bison. I want to go back to this. They always have the horns. They always have the horns. So no matter what time or space, they always have the horns. This particular case, you've got more like the black horses, but these are done with chop. And the difference and the reason they're better articulated is they actually took time to grade it and carve into the rock before they begin to draw the chop behind it. Now going back to this one, this is by the Comanche. By the time this is drawn, the Comanche had the horse for probably 150 years, possibly. If that date of 1640 is right, they probably had it for 150 years, maybe 200 years, close to it. So they had when they drew this, so they were able to articulate the horse better. This again is Comanche at a different place. When they left out of Southwest Wyoming, This is considered to be a Comanche horse also, even though it's hard to attribute to. Now, this is where things get strange. This photograph right here is a picture of a horse. And probably every person here will say, that's not a horse. But it is. This is what they call a Comanche shield. And this is the spirit. They were great lancers. They were phenomenal. What the Comanches would do is right up to the buffalo. They lead the buffalo with two posts and then they drive the spear into its heart and you turn the horse away before the buffalo fell on. They were phenomenal. What they learned from the Spanish is that they put metal on their horses. The Comanche put leather on theirs. So they covered the horse with leather. And as part of primeval, they had us go look at these things in this antique house. And they had one of those Spanish mail coverings like this. And they had one that was a leather covering like a Comanche. And they're just hard to preserve. I mean, you had to acquire one from a First Nation person in the early 1800s or late 1700s and then conserve it. And that's hard to do because you guys know how to fill up your house with stuff. Say, I don't want to keep that shield. I don't want to keep that whatever it is around. But they would use it first with mail for the cover the horse completely like the Spaniards would do. But they switched it to covering it completely with leather. And this is a transition. Okay.
Are there any that survive?
Yes, you mean the leather pieces? Yeah, in antique dealers' hands, they're very, very rare. I think probably the best place to see them is in Mexico, because that's what he told me, he acquired this one. He got it from Mexico, he purchased it from a dealer in Mexico, brought it to the United States. Sometimes people rent from these people to use these things, and that's how I got engaged with it. And I went to check to see if the piece that we were renting dated to the particular period of 1857 that the movie was being made. So I can see all this really old stuff that what you could consider pornography. You can't attribute that. For example, if I drop my phone right here, you're going to attribute it to me because my name's in the phone. But attribution to a lost item is very hard to do. So attribution to those items that we're looking at is very difficult to have. This is another Comanche word with that large spear that I was telling you about. That spear was critical to them. And we've actually found the metal spear in archaeological context on the surface, and they're beautiful. In places where they don't rust, they're real dry. We found some archaeologically. Now, this is, how many of you know what this is? Newspaper rock, right? Newspaper rock. And when I first went there, I said, man, this is junk. No, there's just too much stuff there, I don't need to. But they're showing the transition to the wheel. They're showing that transition to the wheel. And the other thing about it is that they're articulating the same thing that there are other places, but on a different medium. And they are showing you the history of what's happening here. I'll use this to transition into the formative period. These mount sheep are associated with a different type. This is what we call superimposition. And there's all kinds of things that people say what superimposition is. For example, on Easter Island, which I've done archaeology work there too, on Easter Island, they will kill the mana of a particular item by defacing it. Those 365 statues that were on the island that were upright, they pushed them all over because they were trying to kill the power of the ancestors of the people that they were attacking. So they pushed them over. Superimposition is a lot of different things, but by the same token, it might be enfolding different ideas together from different times. For example, the Southwest, one of the things that they hunted quite a bit was mountain sheep. And I didn't mention that earlier, so that when I got to this point to mountain sheep. Mountain sheep were in the paleo that we excavated. So we have the mountain sheep here. This mountain sheep is articulated in association with this, because mountain sheep were so valuable to the people of the canyons. The food source was so valuable to them that they articulated it. Now that wheel, if you look at this wheel, the wheel's on top of these sheep, but you can still make out that head. And these sheep here could be a little bit later, could be a little bit earlier, but this wheel is pretty significant in a way, because what it does is it's articulating a change in transportation methods to the area here. This is a cart. Is it pretty easy to see the cart? So this is a cart that's made by First Nations, made by, we think, also Utes in this case. We think it's made by Utes. Same with this train. It's articulating a change in transportation. This particular train is right by that wheel where you just saw that wheel. And it's a little bit different. It's just drawn by different artists, but they're expressing that now there is something that's changed in our environment, and that is significant. So we'll go to the formative period and look at the rock art from the people that are agriculturists. The basis of these trapezoidal figures, and they look like a trapezoid. The basis of these trapezoidal figures come from over here on Colorado up north. This is at Moab. Have you seen this? If you go to Arches National Monument, when you drive inside there and go across the bridge, you go to Arches from going north of Moab. There's a turn out there, and this is open to the public. Park right there, you climb up to this. This is some of the best articulating what they call Fremont, the formative period rock art that there is. That trapezoidal figure becomes something that begins to dominate in the formative period. So the time when they're getting maize, when they're beginning to grow crops. That trapezoidal figure is a dominant figure type. The shield is still in this case, but look at it's covering it, but inside that shield you can still see a triangular piece. This is at Moab, and this is north of the Colorado River, and it's just phenomenal rock art panel. This is barrier style PCS rock art, mainly found in Utah, San Rafael, Swallow Canyonlands National Park. It's technically on the north end of the region. Okay, it's not really, but it's pretty close. So it's just to the north of this dam's back wall. So you have to go into this particular area in this particular area, Barrier Canyon and Horseshoe Canyon. The date of this is about 1,500 to 4,000 years ago, with them suggesting that based on clay figures, they're 7,000. I won't read this to you, I don't know how to read. So, but in this case, what you've got is this stylized form on the Barrier Canyon. When I first found these trapezoidal figures, was in Northwest Colorado, with my friend, and they have this one in Northwest Colorado that's trapezoidal. They're different. This stuff is really highly articulated, but it becomes what I would call the stylistic form in the trapezoid. It becomes a stylistic form for the entire northern canyonlands, all the way down the lower edge. You can see it represented in various places, all the way from Wyoming down to here, not directly, but all the way down to this particular area here, and it becomes a style that's associated with farming. These could be pre-agriculture, but they could be on the cusp of agriculture. For 7,000 years ago, there's a different type of agriculture. I think that as soon as people found out that you put a seed in the ground and that it grew, farming emerged. I think it's passive, but I think that it's just too much common sense, and people are smart. We sometimes know some people aren't that. Sometimes we think that people didn't have the same intelligence, same capacity we did, understanding reason, but they did. And if you look at this one, you've got it articulated in the mantle of the cloak of this particular individual, these two animals. And I keep thinking about what these animals are. Are they wolves? Are they bears? The bears are actually always articulated in a certain way, you can see in this particular area. But nonetheless, they're stylized. They use two different types. They're using painting, they're using packing, they're using braiding. They're making two different choices on what they're doing. Now I'm going to switch from that panel to Thompson Springs, which is.
Before you get into this, did the Moab panel have a name?
Courthouse, I think.
Courthouse?
Yeah, I think it's called Courthouse. If I tell you wrong, it's not because I'm a pathological liar, it's just the silver discs. So the disc not ruined fast enough. I think it's called Courthouse.
Do you think that the squareness, that the figurines that they did is that they were wearing like animal skins or something?
Could be, but they do go from broad shoulders to a tapered down. So,
Right.
Yeah, so it's consistent. So this is north of Moab. So what I showed you in the Great Barrier Canyon. And Great Barrier Canyon, you've got this form, and then what you saw at Moab is this one. This is north of Moab, and you can go see these Thompson Springs. When you come to the junction, Crescent Junction, it's open to public things, but public interpretation. You just simply go north about 4 miles, and it's on your way. And be sure when you go to Thompson Springs, don't just stop where the signs are. Go around to the east, because that's their big balance. So in this case here, you've got this occurring, but you got the decorations in the center. Now, I want to get you out on a reasonable time, but in the stuff that we found in Northwest Colorado, they had pecked it. had these trapezoidal figures, so you saw the ones where there was nothing but the first, second, the third photograph I showed you. In one case in Colorado, what they did was they applied mud to it. So they put mud on the top of it, then they painted it in a polychrome form. They painted it very, very high designs. In a lot of cases, they would put a necklace on it, and it was elaborate. And in the McConkey Ranch, which is north of this place right here, they have these really highly designed necklaces that go along the top of it. So the question of is it because of the road that they go down? Maybe. They've made actually beautiful feathered ornaments. And on Hawaii, they still make the feathered headdresses like they've done prehistorically. And the amount of time it took to make those capes is incredible. They're pretty marvelous. So in some ways, I think that, for example, I can't do this. This is not right, what I'm suggesting. But in the case of this, if you have a big buffalo robe right there, and then you have something that tapers down, maybe you're going to have broader shoulders around the buffalo robe, like I said. In the case of the feathers or something else like that, you might have this. But there's so many different things. One site that we excavated, we mean that I excavated, we had a buffalo robe that they were processing and cleaning and getting the material off of so that they could take it into a buckskin. It takes a lot of time. Yeah, people don't realize how much time it takes unless you've done it yourself. So it's when they put these on and wore these capes, they wanted to ornament. One of the things that we did for Primeval was go in and look at the Shoshone's dresses. Oh, man, you gotta watch me. I'm gonna get out of here tomorrow. They looked at the dresses and they had up to ring. And so I thought that's really cool. And I didn't know what got in it, but I flipped the elk tooth over and on the back of it was petrified, like these drawings right here, not petrified, of an elk. So on the back side of the elk tooth was this particular art. All of this is art. It's expressing a lot of different things: feeling, spirit, religion, economics. It's not all economical. It's expressing whatever the artist wanted it to express. But there's consistency in this case, where you've got this red ochre and you've got this articulation of certain type of styles. What happens in a lot of cases is people want to interpret these things to get their meaning. Like Carol Patterson, she went to Australia and actually studied where they're still doing active rock art as part of what they're doing. And she's really good about interpreting what these things mean. It's pretty much incredible. This is still Thompson Spring. It's an elaborate gallery that's expressing a lot of different things about their life there. This is the White River drainage, and this is the first place that I came across what they call the barrier canyon style rock art. Now, you know, because you just saw barrier style, that it's not exactly the same thing, but you still see the trapezoidal characteristics within segments. Sometimes they will just express it as just a simple thing like this, with a head and no legs, but there'll be an expression of it. This is just another look at it. Like these, more abstract, but you still have the trapezoidal component to it. And if I show you this one before in any of these talks, I found this one. I found this one back in 1979, and it was in a really intriguing place. If you see this, he or she is missing a foot. Yeah. There's a trail. Now, Carol Patterson talks about trails more than I do. There's a trail that goes through this, like a story trail. You can see it up here. And as you go through the story trail, there's always a foot. Now, I thought it was a he, but one of my writer students who was a she said, no, they're giving birth to a baby. Yes, see the umbilical cord, you see the child crying. The mother, if this is the case, did not have that foot. Is it the story of the child looking for that foot through the entire life so that he can be united with his mother? What is this story about? Now, we can interpret this for now and over through time. Why I picked this is because this is, again, trapezoidal. In this case, you have a big trapezoidal thing. This is trapezoidal in this case, but it's telling us something. It's telling us a lot of things that are happening. In this particular case, they've interpreted this to be like a summer solstice predictor. On the Hopi Reservation, and I won't show you the sacred rock art, and all of it's sacred in the way. They have an Ikarukanata, but when the sun comes up in the summer on the summer solstice, right? When it comes and hits it, it hits in the center of this of the circle like this, like on a heat above the chocolate. On the other side of the Ikarukanata, when the sun sets, it hits at the same place. on summer solstice. There's a concept of understanding that that's the time to plant corn. Now, we put this on a great amount of time on this because it's so cold here, especially up in the, if you go north, it's colder at night, you don't have long growing season. You gotta get your corn in, it's gonna go for 40 to 60 days. You gotta get it in at that point in time. You might have frost before that, but you won't have frost again until September, if you can find it on that date. So there's a reason to know precisely what the plant is. And it's for other reasons too. And Vermilion Creek, it's, this type of style is pecked, completely pecked, and it's on the Colorado border. Most of the stuff is pecked, and you see this, archaeologists sometimes are bad boys. And like you say, oh, wait, we want to come be killed by this guy, so let's go up here. No, that's stupid. But you think, why is this articulated this way? You can go a little bit crazy, but this is that same figure I showed you, except that the Vermilion Creek is all pecked. Instead of painted, it's entirely pecked. And at the bottom, this drives people crazy, are these headless figures. Now, that is something that's articulated in other places, and I won't interpret it. I just won't interpret it. But these figures are walking. In another case within this panel, which I do not think I've got, yes, I do. You have scorpions. So you've got these scorpions articulated. In this one here, can you guys see the tail on it? Yeah. So it's an interactive counting these. One quick archaeology story. We catch these when we're digging. Because we're bored. And they've got these things that look like Mormon crickets. And you can put these in with Mormon crickets inside your screen and they'll fight each other. And the Mormon cricket wins every time. And they're not Mormon crickets, but they're, you know, things got skin in it. Yeah. I didn't say we were nice people. Paradox Valley coming towards us is to the east of Moab. Okay. In this particular location, you get a different articulation of the trapezoidal figure that comes closer to the ancient Pueblo, the stuff that you see in Chaco Canyon, stuff that you see around here. But what the difference is that in most of these cases, the way that the foot is, and the head is different. The head is expressed in a different form. You can spend days and days and days, we have, recording these things and still not get every element of this panel. There's superimpositions, there's the circle right here, for like what we said, solstices, there's the journey panels. There's each of these different elements within inside this panel. But it's all associated with agriculture. This panel here is one of my favorites, by the way. And I don't know why it is, but I really kind of like this. The bag, the large feet. So we know what they put in. I actually.
Is there any indication that the artist ever signed their work?
Maybe with a totem. Maybe with a totem. So with a totem, yes, not in the way we would consider signing it, but with a totem. And it might be the whole thing is an expression of totem. Now, this is where things became interested in what I would like to come back and talk about at some future point, is that they made this rock art inside where they lived. And we came across it in a couple places we excavated. In those cases, they have art inside their structure. And then it's just like what we do with inside of our structure. We want this person to bless us. These are sacred. And I think that everybody has a sense of humor, but these are sacred totems to these particular individuals. These are inside where they live. And we've done excavation, so we know that it's not just underneath the cave. We've done excavation here in this area to show it. For example, in this case, the structure burned down. Outside of the structure, there's a crane. There's an individual, there's a crane, and then this is the bigger piece right here. And it has like deer prints on it. I'm sorry, you can't see that as well as I thought you could. But inside of these structures, we find what they were living on, and they're growing diverse maize. On the back of the walls, they have these articulated pieces. And this right here is deer prints. This beneath this man right here. This goes way on through the extension here, just wouldn't work in this case. So, like in all instances, I'm gonna give you a moment of questions here. Like in all instances, you have one person working and two people working. Except I've got to give Chloe a prop. She's doing her homework. And she's glad when it's over, so she's happy when it's done. So it's exploitation of child labor if they're related to you, it's somehow not child labor. It's just teaching them to grow up to know how to work, you know.
There you go.
I hope that question. Yes,
You never mentioned, the whole, the UFO. Is that a thing in your mind?
well, you know, to be real blunt, people will bring it up sometimes. But I think that human imagination, human ability, is so vast and such great ability. I think that they generated everything that they created. I think that it didn't take. I think that they could generate by human imagination, desire to express their environment they lived in. So I usually try to steer clear of it. But I don't judge people that say different than I do. 'Cause who knows? Who knows? You know.
Depends on what they're smoking.
Yeah, but in most cases, I think that they're generated by people. The reason I put it this way is because, for example, up in Weatherby Draw, Larry Lorman did an excavation right from these beautiful shield figures. And down there, found the graders, he found tools they're using and making there. If an alien can get here from the spaceship, why are they going to use the graders and stone tools to make it? Or taking it?
My point was, if they were seeing, if they were depicting what they saw, if they saw a UFO.
I think about that quite a bit because Polynesian art, which is another thing I've worked on, and Mongolian art, which I've worked on, I think that there's this concept of something other than us. So trying to express that is pretty hard. And we all go through the course of our day looking at multiple emotions during the course of the day. And sometimes the best way to work it out is journal or to draw. Now, sometimes you wonder what they're trying to work out, if they're trying to work it, if there's acceptability within the group. For example, if you made something that wasn't trapezoidal, what happened to you? You know, were you punished or could you explain yourself away? Was there conformity in requiring a certain type of art to be made? And some people would say yes. And sandstone paintings, you know, and Navajo sandstone paintings and stuff like that, they can explain specifically why they're doing it, what the purpose of it is. And then in wiping it away, why they do that too. So there's a reason for what the artist does, but because of the fact, in my younger years, I was over the social science fine art department, and that means I had the artists working for me. Why they choose to express themselves the way they choose to express themselves is based on their environment around them. It's something that goes on with a mental template inside their brain. And I don't know where the synchronization of that is. It's the environment around the economy. Economy is important. The economy around, because they've got a lot of these things with plants that have corn, you know, showing that they're killing animals. They're sacred to them. The animal is sacred to them. In Mongolia, where we killed the sheep every 3 days. And initially, I would go with mice. We call them students because they're students there in Mongolia. They're all Mongolians. And in one case, they were killing the sheep, and it's not. I don't know, they cut it from the inside, reached it. They say it's less cruel than bleeding them out. Besides that, their blood culture, they don't want the blood to go off. They use the blood for their food, so they mix it and make like sausage and stuff like that. But while this was going on, one of the students was calming the sheep by breathing into its nose. And I thought, whoa, I'm not even 100 years ago, she's like this. Because what it boils down to is expressing conflict between taking the life to give yourself life and what they're actually supposed to do with their opponent. To me, it was a way to rectify the tension between the dichotomies between life and death. I mean, that's pretty deep right there, but I mean, I don't know why they drew it. There was something that they were doing to explain their work, explain the environment they're in.
Superstitions playing still alive.
I don't know, superstitions is kind of one of those strange things, but superstitions is, my wife will tell you I don't like being 13. Yeah. I really hate. I'm a trichodecaphobic, and so is Mark Twain. So that puts me in good company, But I don't know. But sailors are superstitious, and I was in the Navy. I lived 3 years in 1 month on a ship. They're superstitious. We can't make rock art either. But the superstition is important, but I don't know what's real and what's
Oh, right.
where they bring.
Or or the culture believing in a higher power.
Yes, the higher powers is important because they all have real good explanations, like in Mongolia, where I actually had people explain things to me about like the rain. They believe that all of us go to the blue sky. It's kind of interesting because we're water. Most of us is water. And what happens to water, whether we like it eventually or not, it evaporates into space and it comes back down. But they all believe we all go to the blue sky. So that spirituality they're trying to express in the rock art of the rain. This taking the blue sky. At least that's the way it was explained to me. Now you get another person interpreting, and they're going to take something deeper. But so superstition, something higher than that.
Are there any like commonly accepted or thought interpretations of different aspects of BCS art, like the trapezoids being float? Or like
Oh,
other
yeah, that's a good
common
question.
things?
That's a really good question. There's multiple thoughts on it.
Okay.
Yeah, multiple thoughts on it. Like that one that's got the articulation of two animals, which I didn't know.
Yeah.
That's pretty intriguing. No, I would like to. Bears usually have a hump on their back, but that should be grizzly bear. Those animals, they're pretty vicious. It could be the totem too. They want that totem to protect it, going back to superstition, but that's, that's whatever works,
Yeah, I mean, like BCS is my favorite style of rock art. Like there's the name of the panel, but there's a really big one right off the road in San Rafael.
Yes.
Swell. Where you have these sort of like lines or wings coming out of people. There also seem to be a lot of like kind of insectoid patterns.
Yes.
Like long antennas, which I guess could be antlers, it could be like bugs or something. Are there any like sort of consolidated opinions that you think would be more accurate, or do you have like recommended sources to
Well,
people at BCS?
the people that I like most, like Polly Schaff, who spent her whole life studying it. So she comes with a tutor. I'm saying she's not the end all be all, but she comes with a tutor comprehension of what BCS is. So she gets the idea of what that stuff is down. Like what you're saying in San Rafael as well. So hers is a study opinion. She's looked at enough rock art through time and focused on what they potentially mean. It's talk to First Nation people and get their interpretation of why you're making it. Like the most important thing you can do with an apple sand painter is say why. But some of it so thick that they can't utter it. Because once you speak it, it becomes something that's in this dimension, not in another dimension. So to speak and explain it kind of kills the spirit of it, changes the spirit. But I would say Paul Chapman's got the best comprehension of it. You can look up online, Paul Chapman. The book came out in '71, I think, and it's been revised in 2002. Yeah. It's close to what it's called. If you just type in the Great Barrier Canyon,
Yeah.
per name comes up in your